All right. What's going on, guys? Let's go ahead and pop on over to our Cintiq capture real quick here so we can jump right in. All right, so I've done a little bit of work on this guy since the last time we spoke. I know we're streaming a little bit later than what we normally do. Had to go get my car looked at, and I'm gonna actually have to go back here in the next few days. But yeah, so we've done some new stuff. I'll show you what we've done. This is going to be a pretty chill stream here as we kind of just play around with cleaning up some overall design changes, just some little things here and there, and then during that time we can answer questions or do whatever. But yeah, let me go ahead and show you some of the cool stuff that I've done here recently. Let me switch something up real quick. Alright, so we got our hammer, which we can collapse all of this junk, turn it all off, and our head, that, and our armor. There we go. Alright, so in the last stream we were talking about playing around with some koi fish and trying to like integrate that onto the hammer. Here, I have perspective turned on. And I'll highlight this just so I can rotate a little bit easier. So I did some like relief work of some koi fish around here on the hammer. Thought it would be pretty neat to kind of play around with that. What up, HUD boy? I'm gonna be lurking, you say? That's fine, no worries. Showing off the hammer here real quick. So yes, just some relief detail, like I said, of these koi fish on the hammer. Nothing crazy. I just kind of did a few of them on each side, 3 or 4, I think, and did a couple different patterns. What I essentially did was I made a you know, just straight koi fish, and then I came into the 3D Gizmo tool and did a bend curve function, and then from there, you know, I was able to add some twist to these, some curve, and then I was able to kind of squash them a little bit and then throw them on the hammer as some relief detail after I squashed them, and then made some changes to be able to kind of fit those on there. So it's kind of like a rough and ready job, but I think it works pretty well. I think it adds some really neat visual interest. I think it kind of goes with our character. He's a bear. He's got this hammer, and he's got some cool koi fish, which kind of fits the Japanese theme that we're going for, as well as the you know, whole bear thing we got going on as well. So let me turn off that hammer, and right up here I have the auto collapse start group feature on so that I can kind of group all these pieces, so that if I want I can come on through here and toggle off all the armor all at once, armor and clothing. So like I said, just some general cleanup as we play around here with some of this. I've been working on the face a little bit today. Earlier this morning, just trying to find some shapes that are more appealing, and then try to mess with those a little bit more to kind of emphasize those things, as well as change what I don't like. So the face is a little bit different now, not too much really, but just kind of playing around with some stuff. This nose actually is garbage, so we have another one here, some nostrils. So I've kind of thickened up the nose here, a little bit more rounded shape, and I'm just gonna kind of play with this a little bit more, as well as play with the teeth, the gums, and all that junk. I kind of want to size up these teeth a little bit. I believe these are all under a single subtool. So this is like just really basic in here. I didn't know what I was going to do with this when I started sculpting it. I didn't know if I was going to keep the mouth opened or closed, or or what I was really thinking for the pose. And I'm still really not entirely sure, but still we can come on through here and deselect some of these just to make a little bit of a selection in here. And then we can kind of scale these up a bit. If I can get that center point there, and for some reason, there we go, having some trouble selecting that. So just a little bit of a scale up. You can kind of play with this and get the lips to wrap around those a little bit better, just to make them a little bit larger, a little bit more prominent. I can also sharpen up these teeth, these four front teeth, if they're looking a little doofy, which they might be, just kind of looking at them right now. But we'll play with it all. We'll play with it all. We'll get there. So do the same thing to these bottom teeth. Just kind of size them up a bit, make them a little bit more prominent. I'm thinking we're gonna have an open, kind of snarling mouth for our pose and expression. I'm starting to kind of think about here as we go. And then we can kind of adjust the lips to maybe wrap around those a little bit better and kind of tuck in. Could even do a Boolean subtraction with Dynamesh to really get the interaction there, as if it's like being pushed away from there. That's what I often do when I'm trying to get the interaction of something like depressing another surface. I'll just kind of subtract it from that, and then you can even inflate the edges around that. That's a pretty good way to do it, and we might do that. But I don't really want to get rid of these subdivs quite yet, so we won't do any Dynameshing quite yet. So yeah, I think the face is, like I said, I think it's a little bit more appealing now. There's some subtle changes to the roundness of the face that have been made, and we can even kind of exaggerate that even more. This strap is kind of in the way, so it's making it a little bit hard to see that. So let's turn that off. I also bulked up the chest. It was looking a little bit strange from the profile. It looked like the head was kind of just jutting out of the trapezius muscles. So I wanted to bring the neck up and give it kind of like that bear-like chest-like girth, where the chest kind of blends into the neck, into the head, and it's kind of all this solid transition from there. Craig, yo, what's going on? Thanks for joining us. So that's the basic idea there. I also want to play with these arms. I'm not a huge fan of the transition that I'm seeing here, as well as here. I would kind of like to soften some of these shapes up. Just a little bit, I think, too prominent, and I think it kind of pulls your attention away from what's really important here. The arms are supposed to be kind of a period of rest here, but we end up having such a strong shape here between the forearms and the bicep here that I think it catches the eye a little too much. So just kind of trying to blend that very gently, soften that shape. There's a lot of things. Like I said, this is kind of a lot of general, overall kind of second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever number we're on, pass to try to clean some of this up and get closer to where we're gonna be posing this dude. Hopefully we can get there soon. Because, you know, once you start posing, that's when, typically, you know, that's when stuff starts to really come alive for the character. When everything's in this whole symmetrical state, if you can give in a symmetrical pose like this, if you can give your character as much character, as much emotion, as much appeal as possible right here, it's going to be even better when you get into pose. So the more work we put in now, it will matter when we get there. So just being careful, trying not to destroy these forms, but more so just kind of blend. I'm trying to be really light with that smooth brush as it's very strong. I kind of like the view that we get from the back side of the arms. Could be a little bit tight through here. We can soften it up just a little bit and maybe kind of bulk up this transition so that it's more obvious that there's a flat there. I do want to keep this really clean though. Looking at this from just every angle is very, very important. We're dealing with 3D here, obviously. So I do want that transition to be a little stronger, but at the same time, you know, as I build that shape up, I have to look at it from the other angle on the side view, get that profile and see what that's going to look like. It's easy, I think, to get caught up in these forms within other forms, right? You're mainly your secondary shapes, and you end up working on those so long, and you're zoomed in on this one area so long, and then you come on out and you're like, oh, I screwed up like the primary shape way more than I thought that would, and that's not what we want. So it's good to be able to zoom out and look at it from the big picture. You know, in Photoshop you have like your little thumbnail that you can put up in the corner, and that's nice so that you can have a kind of a secondary view. And I would love it if ZBrush would have like the ability for you to open up a second window, and then like over here you can maybe just have your model, and you can like pose it however you want, and then you can have another camera view where you're working on it. That'd be really nice. I would love that feature. There's like a little bit of a tool pop-up somewhere. Off the top of my head, I don't know where it is. I can't remember, and I'm not going to dig for it because I don't use it. I don't think it's under display properties. It's in there somewhere, but like I said, it's not really worth it as it only shows a single subtool at a time, and it's small and it moves, and it's not very helpful. But yes, having a second camera would be awesome. Here's for hoping for the next version of ZBrush. But their feature list is very, very, very long. And there are other features I would prefer having over that first as well. I still think that transition is a little strong there. I worked on this part of the arm during our last stream, I believe. But yeah, we'll play with that. I don't really like the width of that part of the arm there from that profile view. I don't know. We can play with it later, but just something to keep in mind. Little note for the checklist. Maz, hey, how's it going? Welcome to the stream. Thanks for joining us. Come hang out, play some ZBrush. So, one of the things I was looking at was trying to find a way to make the silhouette from the front view of this character read a little bit better. And I think one of the best ways that I found to kind of improve that is to remove that front armor piece, this piece right here. Just by removing that, the silhouette of this character reads quite a bit better. The reflection doesn't really help. Let's just do a flat color, and we'll get as close to black as we can. There we go. So the silhouette, I think from the side, has a decent read even with that on. I think that's fine. But as we go to the front, some things get pretty lost. It looks, just from a silhouette, it looks more like a torso with some stubby little legs down there. And that is fairly close to what the character actually is. But removing that front piece helps kind of make a little bit more sense for what you're looking at. Especially if we rotate to like 3/4, can start to make a little bit more sense of what we're seeing. So like I said, for improving the silhouette, I've found that kind of removing that piece is a good solution to that. But I'm not sure if that is the actual action that should be taken. So here, let me hide this extra bare face real quick. Whoops. So what I'm thinking is maybe just shortening this piece or doing something to that extent, because in terms of armor, in terms of practicality first, I don't think that there would be any reason why a character wearing some samurai armor wouldn't want to protect their groin region, right? So maybe just like a different kind of padding or protection or something we can do. But this is kind of based off of the samurai armor that I've been referencing this entire time. A bunch of stuff over here similar in concept. So I don't know, we can play around with it, like I said, doing quite a bit of general cleanup. I'd like to kind of just keep it turned off for a while as I mess with some other stuff, just so I can kind of get a feel for it and think about how I want to move forward, if there's a different solution that I can kind of come up with as I'm working. But yeah, just some general cleanup. And then again, for those who are just kind of popping in here who didn't get a chance to see the changes that I made to the hammer, we did the thing that we talked about last, which was doing some relief sculpting of some koi fish kind of swimming around on this hammer. So I thought that would be pretty cool. The koi fish, you know, it goes with the Japanese aesthetic, and the fish goes with the whole bear aesthetic. So we have that here, and I just wrapped about 4 around on each side, so I think we have a total of 8 koi fish swimming around here. I used the bend curve deformer that's new to ZBrush 4R8 and played around with that, and I thought that was pretty fun. It wasn't super hard to do. I didn't you know, put a ton of time into it, so if I don't like it, we can always delete it and get rid of it. But yeah, let me go ahead and turn that off. So real quick there. All right, and this piece I want to hide, make sure that's hidden. Okay, so we were playing around with the pants last time, figuring out how this is gonna work. Right now I have this split into multiple pieces of geometry, but I will probably combine these before posing. The more pieces you have for posing, the harder it's going to be to pose your character. So it's best to simplify a lot of this stuff. I'm just trying to clean it up a little bit. So when I go to pose this character, and the chest is kind of poking through the armor there a little bit, I'll correct that as well. But what I'm going to do when I go to pose this is I'm probably going to delete everything that is not visible here. So we'll say like that. So all of that geometry will most likely be deleted, except for, you know, what again would be visible. So maybe something like that. And the reason for that is when I go to pose a good portion of this and I'm trying to create a mask and maybe doing a rotation or something like that, the difference in geometry is really going to affect your your rotations or any bends or any kind of twist that I do, really anything, it's going to affect these pieces differently that are overlapping just because of the difference in their geometry. So I'm going to want to try to get rid of any layers of geometry that will never ever be seen, especially just to like save space on the mesh, as well as make it easier on myself just overall. So Hudboy says, I feel like resizing would fix the silhouette but allow you to keep the piece in. I feel if the bottom of it was just level with the back padding would drastically change the way it looks. Yes, I totally agree. I tried to do that, exactly what you're describing, but it ends up looking really doofy. So turn on transparent here so you can kind of see where that line is in the back. So it's a little bit easier said than done. I already played with it. So it would be about 1/2 of the size that it is currently. So we can play around with that. I can show you kind of real quick here. So let's say we want to keep all 3 of these pieces in, right? So 1/2 scale, scooch on up, pull it up to there, and of course we can play around with that a little bit because these are, you know, not in position exactly where they would be. So maybe something like this. Obviously I did that super quick, so that's not exactly if I want to line it up with that back piece, yes, it does definitely help out the silhouette. This ends up looking very squashed though, so the scale of these is changing quite drastically. So the next course of thought would of course be let's get rid of these bottom pieces, and we can do that pretty easily. I even had them polygroup because I already tried this. So we could do something like this, where pull that up. Now it's just 2 in the front, and then maybe I can squash them a little bit. And if I want to do 2 in the front, then I think maybe I need to reduce the other ones to 2 as well. So maybe this is the solution. This is kind of where I was leaning towards. But if I want to do 2 here, I think I kind of need to replicate that across the others, just so it's similar. But I'm not sure yet what I wanna do exactly. Still thinking about it, still playing around with the idea, but yes, you are kind of thinking of the exact same thing that I was there. So we'll figure it out. I think it's just gonna be a matter of trying a couple different things and seeing what we can get to work. For these pants, I want to add a little bit more just general asymmetry in here. It really won't matter too much because they won't be seen. They won't be seen very much just because they're going to be covered. So we can do some nice stuff with masking here in order to like puff out the creases here if we want to play around with that. If I want to do that, I think I need to get rid of some edge loops. Make sure that's on delete edge loop complete, not just edge. And this will allow us to kind of blend that crease a little bit better. I'll do the same thing on the other side, as well as probably try to get a little bit of rotation here, so it's a little bit different scale. And as long as that's not clipping too much, which it kind of is, can maybe play with moving this a little bit or even shifting it in. Transpose and the 3D gizmo tool, just as like a quick selection. You guys know how you can like alt click a piece and then you go to that subtool if you're using the transpose tool or the 3D gizmo. So either one of these, if you hold Control and click a piece, you'll group or mask whatever polygroup you select. So Control click, okay, so it masks everything except for that polygroup. So very helpful, just kind of quick selection tool. There's a bunch of little navigation tricks like that in ZBrush that make working just a lot faster. ZBrush is what a lot of people consider ZBrush to be a little backwards in its design, but I think it's actually once you kind of learn everything and get used to it, it's a lot faster than other tools. It just kind of becomes second nature as you figure out all the little tricks. So again, I'm trying to, originally the purpose of that geometry was to create some creases there, as well as create like the basic idea of where the knees could be, and I think we did a decent job of kind of getting that idea across. What I would like to do, I just want to play around with dynameshing this real quick. Just subdivide up, and still seeing some areas that I want to clean up and fix. It'll never be perfect. These are separate pieces of geometry, unless I weld them together, which I want to kind of experiment with here. So let's try that. So Dynamesh, I'm going to Dynamesh pretty high because the scale of this is pretty small. And that Dynamesh really fast, holy crap. So we're at 1.6 million polys. We got some nifty polygroups here. And one thing that's really great about polygroups, let's step back here real quick so that we can fix these. I don't want these polygroups to be visible down here, because that'll screw up some remeshing. So what's really great about polygroups is that you can use them to kind of guide your topology flow. And I've talked about this before, but let's go ahead and do it again. Because I'm going to be, so Dynamesh 3K, 1.8 million, pretty good. Some simple polygroups, ZRemesh, keep groups on, and let's try 4,000 polys and see what that does. And that should give us a decent result here. We might get some, if there's some weird bleeding over of poly groups that I can't really see, we might get some weird geometry, some weird gaps, but this should work decently well. It should. And if it doesn't, it should work decently well with some tweaking. All right. So it says that there was an error encountered and the remeshing was aborted. That's most likely due to some holes in the geometry, or it could be caused by a number of things. So what I want to do is try to lower my Dynamesh count. And I just want to kind of experiment with this. Dynamesh again, so a lot lower resolution. Let's do 2 as well. So we lowered our poly count on our initial Dynamesh piece, and we lowered our ZRemesh count a little bit as well. Typically, you can kind of correct that error just by lowering your ZRemesh count and trying to go for a little bit of a lower poly count there. But we'll let that do its thing, and if that doesn't work, we'll try it again, lower it again. So that did work, but like I said, so there's some weird poly groups bleeding through, but you can see over on this leg, it did a really good job of giving us some nice clean poly groups, some nice clean poly loops to work with. So that's kind of what we're looking for. So we can kind of step on over here to this side, and it doesn't look like there's any poly groups kind of bleeding through here, so I'm sure it's just kind of a resolution error. And let's step forward, or I can't because I undid and did a new action. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna select this polygroup, make sure that I can clean this up a tad. So take these, just kind of manually throw them over here, mask them off, press Ctrl W, and that polygroups that as a single piece. And I'm just going to do a little smooth so I can make sure that everything did indeed update. So when I Dynamesh this again, it does re-Dynamesh the piece. Lower it a bit more, Dynamesh, and it doesn't look like my Dynamesh wants to go through. There we go. So Dynameshed a little bit lower. And let's try it now with a target of 1K polys and see what it does. So this is kind of just experimenting to see what we can get here with this geometry. So we've gone kind of back and forth with ZBrush, so a little bit lower poly as well as Dynamesh on these pants, just to kind of see what we can get. And it looks like it's doing a little bit of a weird turn there. Let me see if I can correct that. Alright, so we're getting a little bit of a weird pinch in there, but with the deletion of some edge loops, we can correct all of that. So I already have it set to delete edge loop, and now I can just kind of run through here, delete all those, delete all those, delete a couple inner edge loops there, and get really low poly here. So just kind of more of, if you saw during the last stream, plus what we just did here, a little bit more of an organic kind of sculptural workflow, and then in the end kind of taking some pieces and combining them to get a specific result. And then subdividing that or turning on just our dynamic subdivisions will let us see how those creases interact. And we can simply take them like I was doing before, rotate them, scale them out, or even use our move brush and play with them that way. But we got some interesting creases going on, maybe not so interesting up here, but again, we can sculpt over that after we subdivide and make other changes as well. So, what do we think, guys? I think I'm going to leave them that way for now, and I'm going to delete this piece of geometry. And I have that saved in another subtool if for any reason, or in another tool, sorry, Z tool. So if I need to get that back for any reason, I can do so. How do you affect the edges like the way you are doing it? How do I affect the edges? If you are referring to, are you referring to ZModeler, the ZModeler brush? So you can, in ZBrush, you press B or click up here, you have all your brushes. And one of those brushes in here, we can click on ZModeler. So the ZModeler brush. ZModeler brush is the box modeling tool within ZBrush. So you can do all sorts of really cool box modeling stuff like you would in Maya or Max or whatever. 3D Coat, whatever you want to use. So with that, all I have to do is hover over a face, an edge, or a vertice. And holding the space bar, I can switch the interactions for all of those. There's a lot of different stuff that you can do with it. Very powerful tool. I love it. When it was first announced, I was so excited. I was like, yes, now I don't have to leave ZBrush to do this kind of work. And what's really great about it is that you can do all this hard surface modeling stuff inside of ZBrush, you can use the ZModeler brush, and then you can use all of your standard kind of ZBrush tools with that as well, which is awesome. I love it. So I think maybe I'm fine with this being like a 2-panel thing instead of 3 to kind of make that silhouette a little bit stronger. Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, man, glad I could help out. So 2 panels instead of 3, and to do that, we might have to change these other ones a little bit, make them a little bit shorter as well. But let's see here. So let's do a split hidden. It's going to create another start group. I can turn that off. And can do this, split hidden again. Turn that start group off. And I'm just going to come on through here and very sloppily delete some excess geometry. Delete hidden. Let's just do close holes. Subdivide up. Give me a really high Dynamesh on these. And I say really high Dynamesh, but as you can see, we're not that high in our poly count. All right. Just kind of clean this up just a little bit. It won't matter too much once I pull the trigger on ZRemesh, but just enough to kind of help guide it a little bit better. Dynamesh again. And ZRemesh it all. And it should only take a second. Boom, some nice new tubes. And now they're only 2 instead of 3. So, got those. This is an extra piece of, oh, no, we just got that. Need to unhide it. All right, cool, now it's down to 2. And I could do that for the others. Let me turn on perspective and kind of just look here. Yeah, let's look at it. Let's see what it looks like with just 2. And I'm kind of covering it with my pen because I don't want to look at the rope that I have hanging down there. I think I'm fine with that. I think just having it there is what is kind of important to me. So let's do this. Let's auto groups, mirror and weld, and then we can kind of select all these on the same side. And I can do a split hidden, hide all that, and same thing here as we did last time. But this time I am going to make it a little bit easier on myself to work on. So if I wanted to come in here, you notice that like some of this geometry gets in the way. It's kind of hard to work, right? So I'm just going to turn off symmetry, and let's split those up real quick. And I'm just going to delete this other side. So now I only have one side that I'm working with here. And I can come on through and delete the geometry that I don't need and kind of see a little bit easier so that I can work on this stuff. And just do some quick selections like we did last time. Delete hidden, close holes, group all, group visible. Let me just try to ZRemesh. Yeah, it's going to be a little finicky. So we'll clean it up just a wee bit. just so that the Z remesher can kind of follow what's going on here a little bit better. It's a little finicky, but if you know how to kind of make it do what you want, you can have some nice control over it. And this one. And we'll Dynamesh that. Z remesh it. Oh boy. That's a fun one. I don't even know what happened over there. It's a pretty junky geometry to begin with. It's a pretty terrible shape. Let's try that again. Hey, a little bit better. Man, that is gross. That's close enough. I'm fine with that. Alright, so we only have one side here, so I can kind of merge that down, mirror and weld. Got that all on the other side now. And hey, there's just two of them. And we can do that on the other side, or I'm sorry, the back side as well. And kind of have that going there. So I think that I think those pieces, like just proportionally to his legs, were a little bit long in general. So I think that's kind of a good decision. It's going to really help out our silhouette from the front view as well. And that was kind of my main concern, reason for doing that to begin with. So this back guy, let's grab some stuff. What I want to do, actually, I just want to delete these pieces so they're completely gone. And I have those saved as well. If I really want them back for any reason, I can grab them. I'm totally not afraid of just deleting stuff though. I just get rid of it. Get rid of all the garbage. Clean house. It's not too hard to load in an extra Z tool if you need to anyway. Let's just do a delete hidden. Let's just get it out of the way now. Split hidden that time. And our normal, same process. And rotating, if you're having some trouble with your camera, you're getting really close in on some stuff like I am right now, perspective can make stuff a little bit more difficult to rotate around while you're working. That's why I keep it off most of the time while I'm sculpting, and then I turn it on to like get a big picture view of what's going on with my mesh. So that's kind of my strategy there. I would not recommend keeping it on all the time or keeping it off all the time. I would recommend that you kind of switch on and off on occasion. All right, zero mesh that. Move on down. Cool beans. Nothing crazy. If anything, I think kind of draws attention up even more, which, you know, in our case, for what we're going for, is even better. So let me do a quick save as, save that Z tool, and we can keep on going here. Just some little cleanup here and there for just about everything that I want to look at. A lot of stuff. I've been thinking about merging specific things together. as I go. I'm not sure. Actually, here's the way I'm gonna kind of fix this transition. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my hand piece, which has the fingers on it. I'm gonna duplicate that, delete my subdivision levels, grab only the hand. Let's do it on the other side. Delete hidden. I'm going to take that hand piece and I'm going to merge that hand piece into my arms. And I don't want any subdivision levels here because I'm going to Dynamesh these two together. So we'll let that do its thing relatively quickly. And then I can kind of blend between these two, I think, a little bit easier. And then I still have the hand there, and you'll see how this will work as I do this. So I'm just using my trim dynamic brush here, nothing special. Kind of close some holes, fill in some gaps. And this transition I don't like, so I'll have to kind of take my trim brush and kind of try to blend these edges a little bit better. And lowering my poly count and working on this would be a lot easier as well, so I can do that here in a minute. And just play with cleaning that transition up. And then again, can see my other hand here on top, which is still connected to the fingers. That's the one that I'm going to use. If I do a general kind of smooth and I can kind of deflate some of this, I can get it to fit within there very nicely. And because I don't really need this part of the hand, I can even delete it. What I just need is that transition into the wrist there. So forearm, wrist to hand, so that's kind of the connection point that I was attempting to get there. So really I can delete a good portion of this and be fine, and just kind of keep Dynameshing away and playing with cleaning a good amount of this up. And we're getting a little bit of a weird kink there. If anything, that should be moved down closer to the wrist. Whoops. Play with pinching that a little bit. And again, having a lower poly count is going to be a lot easier to manipulate this stuff. So we can duplicate, Z-remesh back down. Let's do like 2 or 1. 1's fine. So Z-remesh that back down and project up those details. So I think the face is the thing that I've been focusing the most on today, and just trying to draw some more appeal out of that. Find what I do like about it, find what characteristics and emotion I like about the character. Is he supposed to be ferocious? Is he, I mean, he's a bear, so I want him to kind of look a little bit more ferocious, maybe a little bit more angry, which is why I was resizing up those teeth. But kind of give myself some time to work on some other stuff and then come back to it so that I can see it in a little bit of a newer light. I'm sure you guys have heard, like, take a break from your work and then come back and look at it. It gives you a chance to kind of see it from a different perspective, also kind of mirroring your work, maybe taking it into Photoshop or whatever you have, and then just flipping your canvas. That often can be very helpful. Another way to do that, which is what essentially I'm doing right now, is work on something else and give yourself you know, a little bit of time to kind of maybe look at some pants or some hands like I'm doing, and then come back to your face and try to pick out some new stuff to play with. So that's what we'll do here in a sec. And I'll tweak the hand up here a little bit. Pretty simple. And that geometry, when I do go to blend that together, will be a lot more clean when I do so. And these shapes are a little bit hard in here. I want to soften that. And there we go. And now you can kind of see how much more clean they look once I kind of don't have that selected color on there. Makes it a little bit easier to see once they're the same color. You can see in the fingers though that there's some transition changes that need to definitely happen in there. We'll get to those eventually. That might be something that I focus more on once I get into pose, as I'm not quite sure what the hands will be doing. If they'll both be grasping the hammer, if only one will be, it'll be quite dependent on that. All right, so let's look at the face. And let's turn off some stuff around here. So I'm keeping perspective on while I look at this face and try to figure out what I want to do. The ears on the helmet were looking a little bit too pointed, and we just crashed. Give me a quick save, please. Thank you. So the ears were looking a bit too pointed for my liking. Stream health red. Might be because the loading here on the software. I'll give it a second to catch up. Uh-oh. So yeah, my stream health is very, very red and very not good, it says. So hopefully you guys can still hear me. I'll keep going here and let me know. Let me know what problems you're experiencing. Hopefully it'll, normally if it does this, it doesn't do it for more than a minute at the most. The ears were looking much too pointed, much too cat-like, so I kind of tried to round those out, make them look more bear-like in nature. I think the trim being thickened up could also help in that. The problem is at this scale though, if I do an inflate, it's going to kind of push those up quite a bit in size. So we can try that. Inflate at 1 and maybe inflate at 1 once more. So we can play with a few things to try to get that idea across. I think that's one that works out pretty well. So I'm not sure if you guys have heard people talk about, you know, you want to make an appealing character, right? And essentially that's just saying a likable character. And likable not necessarily in the sense of like, oh, hero, villain, this is the hero, so this is the likable character, right? But in the sense of all your Y's kind of line up and the character makes the most sense for whatever universe it exists in. So an anthropomorphic bear, you know, it's kind of a silly idea, right? But in terms of all our Y's lining up, all these things making sense, well, he's wearing this armor. He's obviously a warrior of some kind. I have a very basic expression going on right now. It's kind of like just the most neutral face for the character. I have the mouth open so that when I do go to pose it, I can kind of decide if I want to keep the mouth open, if I want to mess with the teeth and the tongue and everything else, or if I want to close the mouth, so I have that option available to me. I want to be able to have those options available. So the important things are to essentially have everything makes sense for this character. So there shouldn't be, maybe a question is, well, why is he wearing samurai armor, but he uses a hammer? And maybe you can find something in the backstory of the character that you're creating that helps answer those questions. And I think theming maybe the hammer to look similar to the armor or makes sense with the character. So, having some like salmon or koi fish relief detail on the hammer, it makes it more interesting. It makes it look like it's owned by this character. Little things like that, as well as larger things like simplifying some shapes. We're looking for some ferocity here, so it's a pretty stylized character. I wouldn't say that this is like the Zootopia style, but I would say that it's close to the style used in that film. So obviously heavily stylized, not realistic. But with that, we have to think about different things that we can do to convey the purpose of the character, the emotion of the character. What kind of character is he? He's a warrior, he's a fighter, he is again ferocious. So how can we, what kind of eyebrows can we give him that would indicate that he looks, like he's snarling, just from the simple fact of his eyebrows. So even with a neutral pose, by kind of fluffing out his nose and giving it a more rounded shape, it does create this more like high ridge here, which does kind of make it look, even in this neutral pose, more like he is performing a snarl. And I'm thinking that I would like to do some kind of like snarl expression for the face as he's like driving down this hammer. I think that would be pretty interesting. So these are all things that I'm trying to think about as I go through here. All things considered, there's a lot. And just having kind of the time to work on some other stuff and come back through, I can immediately pick up on, I was trying to do a little bit of a ridge here. And I think the correct thing to do is just, it might be very subtle, but there is a shadow being cast there. Can change the light if we need to, if you guys want to see that. But I think the correct thing to do here is to just simplify my shape even more, round it out, and have that kind of blend in a little bit more. I don't think that adds anything to the character. If anything, I think it takes away from the character. I think rounding out his jowls, his lower portion of his head, all of this area down here is going to help the character. I do want him to, be a ferocious bear, but at the same time, I want him to have, maybe not cute, but I still want to go for that, like, appealing, stylized, maybe close to, like I said, Zootopia as a maybe style guide. And not exactly like this. I'm kind of doing this in my own style. I'm not, like, looking at any characters from Zootopia, but that's definitely some inspiration that I can keep in the back of my head as I work. The overall shape of his head here, it gets a little flat on top as I do this, as I work on this character. He's wearing a helmet though, which kind of rounds it out, so I don't think it's too important to play with messing with that, but parts of the head that are seen through the mask here, through the helmet. Let me turn on this extra piece, this kind of visor that goes on here. So with that, you get a little bit more idea of what that looks like. So with this, I'm seeing some stuff that I kind of want to round out a bit more down here. Just kind of play with that. And I don't like the shape. I was kind of playing around with this a while ago, and I haven't messed with it since, but I don't like the shapes that I'm getting there. So I do want to make some kind of change there, but I'm not sure what that's going to fully look like quite yet. I would also like to play around with rounding out the ridges, so I'm going to turn that visor back off. rounding out the ridges of the head here. I'm just going to use my smooth brush very gently and just try to simplify. And the shape did serve a purpose initially. It served a purpose of, you know, being that zygomatic process, you know, that flow from the cheekbone back to your old auditory meatus, your ear hole, your ear canal. That's right. I know a couple anatomy words. Don't be surprised. So it did serve that purpose, but now I think it's better to kind of simplify these forms so I can still have that part of the ridge there. I can still have that be the high point of the side of the face, but just kind of simplifying and blending even more through here, I think, is the best solution to really kind of get the appeal of this character into a realm closer to what we're striving for. And again, I've been working on this character for a little bit, and it's definitely not exactly where I want it to be yet still. This is stuff that takes time, which is the whole point of you know, this character, to spend a little bit more time on him and try to get something a lot more polished by the end. And I think we're making good progress. Every day we find new crappy things that we did the previous day and try to correct them. So, you know, when you post a picture of your work and you say work in progress, you have to really kind of understand that, yes, it is a work in progress. I don't like the ridge that I'm getting there at all now. I don't like the hard transition. I want there to be a transition, just not such a sharp one. And I think we're getting there. Bringing out that appeal, right? The things that make the character who he is. And I've been looking at a bunch of just pictures of bears and trying to kind of, if you guys are familiar with like caricature drawings or the similar kind of work there, it's about trying to find the features that make like a face, that make that face, that particular face. Like, so if you have a hooked nose, you try to exaggerate that a little bit more. And like bears have this rounded head, right? And depending on the type of bear, can have a little bit more flat head on top. And that kind of bleeds into this big neck, which bleeds into the body. So me trying to exaggerate those features a little bit more here. So we can kind of get that. So he doesn't, I don't think, so I was talking about like him looking ferocious earlier, and I don't think that's like the complete goal, because I do still want that appealing, stylized, Disney-esque kind of style here that we're aiming for. But I think if you guys have seen Zootopia, well, let's see. Maybe we can just look up some pictures, because I haven't actually looked in quite a while. So let's see here. So Zootopia bear. So obviously different style, different design. Is this actual art from the movie? I don't know. This guy looks doofy as hell, and I love him. Here, this is a guy in the movie. I actually like this design a lot. So the childlike bears, a little bit rounder face, thinner neck. As you can see here, his neck kind of just bleeds perfectly into his head from that sketch. So similar idea. This is disturbing. Let's not click on that one. But yeah, we can, there's a nice ZBrush sculpt. We can kind of get some ideas for some stuff here, or Zootopia. I'm trying to think of like ferocious. I don't know. Some character that maybe looks a little bit angry. If we can find something that we can reference for that. Just some like different ideas for some of the stuff that they did in the film. Like this guy, for example. He does look very cartoonish. He looks very simplified in his forms. I think he's a bison. But you know, you can still get a lot of that expression through the character. So that's kind of what we're aiming for here. Similar idea. Simplified characteristics and pulling out a couple specific things. And like I said, it's a work in progress. So we'll get there eventually and find out exactly what we're looking for. We might even be, we're definitely a lot closer now to where we want to be for getting into posing. I don't like the transition that we have between the head and the body. I would like to simplify that quite a bit. I wanted this to exist as a period of rest, but I think the shape that we're getting here is too distracting. So I think the simple solution for that is to just delete it, get rid of it, and then either leave it as a clean slate or possibly attempt to create some other example of the like sternocleidomastoid muscle kind of flowing up through here. So we can experiment with that, but let's start by just getting rid of it. Getting rid of that information. So, got some dogs barking in the background, but I think the thing that I want to do is try to split this mesh. But before I do that, let's just mask it off and see if I can get a little bit better of a clean transition just by doing that, and maybe not worry so much about splitting it quite yet. So I'm just using my trim dynamic brush, holding that Alt key right in there. Just knock it down, destroy that form that is really just kind of being a bit more distracting than anything else. And maybe even try to pinch up through here just to get that little tapering. And that might even be enough in itself. So I can maybe try to flatten that out. Part of that issue there was that it was creating a weird transition between the lower part of the head and the neck here. So I really didn't like the shape that was creating. So I really want to knock that down. And I think that's already quite a bit less distracting. I'm going to turn off perspective. Thinking about just the overall shape here that I'm getting. So I'm going to turn off all of my armor if I can. Our start group shifted. So let's do this. Alright, so we turned off all of our armor. We don't have any legs. That's where the pants are. Let's find our pants real quick. Turn on auto collapse. Then our armor, and I can just kind of cycle through these real quick. There we go. Alright. So, obviously the silhouette of our character is drastically affected. Yuppie, hey, how's it going, man? Welcome back. Obviously, the silhouette of our character is greatly affected by the armor that we have, and we just turned all that off, but I want to think about this a little bit more from the perspective of the profile here. And like I said, I widened out that chest. He's got this huge kind of gut on him. I tried to simplify. If we look just at this piece, if we try to like just look at the silhouette, squint your eyes a little bit, or I can turn on flat material just real fast so we can look at it. So I tried to simplify the transition that we're getting here. So overall we just have this kind of round shape, this bean shape here. I'll turn on a basic material. So as I look at that, I'm seeing that this convexity kind of carries, or convexity, yes, kind of carries up through here. But I want to kind of play with flattening that shape out a little bit better. So I'm just going to drop down my subdivs and turn off backface masking so my move brush can actually work. And try to switch the way that that curves a little bit. And then from there, we might be able to get a little bit of an S-curve to create a nice clean transition into the head. And as I do that, we can see some other stuff start to get in the way. This is a pretty uneven surface down here, so just kind of tweaking that, playing with that. This isn't really seen, but just kind of flatten it out so that as it blends outside of that geometry, it still stays clean. So just really trying to clean that up. I think we're already, just by simplifying that, I think it's already a lot better. But again, that armor is going to affect the overall silhouette, the shape of our character, everything, so I don't want to judge too much based on you know, what the character is going to look like without that armor on. Turn all that back on real quick. Hide our hammer. I should probably just delete this extra face at this point. I've created so many changes in comparison. So that was, let's just, even though the teeth and everything are kind of out of alignment, you can see the changes that we've made here to the face. So you can see some hard edges that we have here. The upturning of the eyes and all that are making things look a little bit more sad than what I was looking for. And then rounding out the muzzle. Whoops. This is my favorite face. Rounding out the muzzle and doing some other little tweaks here and there. In all honesty, all of these little things are very small changes that I have made, but they're very small changes that, you know, over time add up into really kind of, I think, exemplifying the things that I was looking to make more apparent. So I'm just going to delete this piece. I have that if I need to get it back. But I want it gone, gonzo. And I definitely think that the face is a lot more appealing now with the few changes that we've made. I definitely think that we've done a good job of bringing attention up higher on our character. I think this is a lot better for a period of rest. Looking at your model in a bunch of different materials can also be extremely helpful. This is one of the things that I do all the time. These are my most used materials down here. Basic material and the second one, that's just pretty much a specular version of the first. They're great. I love those materials. And then there's also my clay materials that I made that do a really good job of just being easy on the eyes and good for sculpting and being able to see turnings of the surface as well as convexity and concavities very well and distinguishing between the two. I have the colored one that I use and then just the black and white ones, the black and white material as well. I typically sculpt with the black and white one though. But it's nice to just kind of, you know, throw some color on here every once in a while. And again, like I said, I'm going to be deleting some extra geometry here. So let's go ahead and do that, since we're working on this chest piece anyway. So what I am going to do here is take everything that would not be ever visible. The bottom part of the belly, a little bit of that's going to be visible. So I can actually just delete lower, delete subdivision levels. And take a slice curve brush. What I'm going to do here, let's step back because ZBrush is being a little dumb, so delete subdivision levels. I'm just going to slice right above the belt line. Split hidden. Run a close holes on this and turn off transparency and make sure that that covers up all those holes down there nicely, and it does. And then for this piece down here, can turn on transparency and get rid of all the stuff that will not be seen. So all of that, there's going to be some problems in the back here that I need to correct. Let's turn off our arms real quick just so we can see a little bit better. And try to select our body. There we go. Well, ZBrush just freaked out on us. Let's try to undo all that. Okay. I just want a little bit of a cleaner selection through there. Just make sure that all of that is good. So this is all geometry here that I am comfortable deleting. So I'm just going to do a delete hidden operation. All that's gone. And now for posing, I'm going to obviously get some subdivs back on this. But now for posing for some selections and stuff that I do, it's just going to be a lot easier to work with this if that is no longer there. Similarly to having some pants, and underneath those pants is nothing, so we just have the pants. There's no reason for me to have any geometry in there, only what's going to be visible. So now we can do some dynameshing and do some cleaning up on this piece. And that was a pretty quick dynamesh. Cool. And I might want to mess with the transition between the deltoid and the arm here, just because this is so thick, it's bleeding into his belly and kind of colliding with his armor there. We can try to figure out what we're going to do there. Some of this might be pretty dependent on the pose for the character, but I'm not quite sure yet because we're not there. But we're close. We're close for sure. So let's Z-remesh this guy and project details back up onto him. How do we think our bear is coming, guys? I think think this stream, let's try that again. I think this stream, the past couple, have been a little bit more chill, but that's because, you know, we've just been making little changes here and there. But like I showed you with the face, you know, those little tweaks, little changes, those add up. And I think the face looks a lot better for it. So I think these past couple streams have, like I said, been slow going, but and a little bit more chill. I haven't been showing off as much new stuff for you guys as I normally do, but I don't know. I think if this stuff has been helpful for you guys, let me know. That's the main reason we do this, to help people out and share kind of what I've learned, and hopefully help you guys out with your stuff a little bit as I work on my own. I think this transition's a little hard here, and I think softening that up would be also helpful in making that period of rest look not quite so distracting. It's called a period of rest for your eyes because essentially it's a place on the character or your composition where there's I don't want to say negative space, but essentially negative space to where it gives your eye some time to rest. It's not quite as noisy. It could strictly be quote white space. It could be, you know, this unarmored portion of our character. So that's what I'm trying to aim for, a period of kind of white space here where flowing down the character, it's not chunk of noise after noise after noise after noise, and have those periods of rest kind of lead into some more interesting parts. So like the arms, which will be a period of rest that leads unto the hammer that our character is holding. So we'll play with them more. I don't know. I was talking about deleting that body underneath that armor so that we could make that a little bit easier on ourselves for posing. We might have to do the same thing with parts of this armor if we can. We'll see when we get there. But and depending on how drastic our pose is, you know, I don't think some of this armor is flexible, but what we need to consider is the material that it's made out of, which in this case is hardened bamboo. Let me grab this real quick. So some hardened bamboo. So some of this may be somewhat flexible, but maybe like between panels, definitely between panels on, again, like those pieces below, or like some maybe pieces on the hood, some of that could be flexible, but for the most part, I think the chest armor is not going to be. So maybe that's not as big of an issue as I think right now. So we are getting closer to pose. I want things to be kind of in a position of me saying with confidence, yes, let's move forward into posing this character. And like I said, we're close, but there's still a few things that I do want to kind of clean up and solidify in terms of design before we get there. For those that missed the hammer earlier, we do have some nice nifty new koi fish rocking on our hammer up here. Some relief sculptural detail, which I think turned out pretty cool. Just the overall style and design of this hammer, I think I'm pretty happy with. I think it's a cool design, as well as not being noisy enough to like before I had this big demon face on it, and I was like, yeah, it looks cool, but at the same time, that face, one, primarily, I don't think went with the overall design that we were going with for the rest of the character, and secondly, I thought that that was competing a little too much with the character here in terms of importance of focus for your vision. So now, instead of just, you know, having just this hammer, we added some nifty little relief detail, like I said, with these koi fish, and these were fun to do. It was just a single koi fish that I had straightened out that I did a bend deformation, which is new to ZBrush 4R8. You access those in your 3D gizmo by clicking the gear, and I did specifically a bend curve deformation on there. And I did a couple different variations here of different stuff, and you can see those. And just a pretty simple way to play around with getting some different detail on there. It was pretty fun. And that's, I've never really, off the top of my head, I can't think of any relief detail like that I've specifically done. There was a project that I was involved on in the recreation of a painting as a relief sculpture, but I didn't do a ton of sculpting for that project, and that was like a year ago, and I don't really, mainly I was just involved in taking care of getting stuff and getting it ready for 3D print. So not a ton of sculpting there, but relief detail. It's some fun and interesting problems to try to figure out and solve. So like I said, trying to think about solidifying some stuff before we go to pose. So for example, this is a leather belt that I would maybe like to detail out a little bit more. All of these little details that are supposed to be rope tying this armor together. I might like to get some interactions with the armor to actually create some Boolean operations, some negative pieces that kind of allow for that rope to slot through the armor, so that makes a little bit more sense. I think that would make sense. I think doing that, as well as just making sure that the way these pieces interact physically makes sense. So little things like adding in some what could be screws or bolts or stuff that kind of holds this armor all together. So little things like that, instead of just having, you know, these placeholder ropes bleeding into where the armor is. So trying to trying to solidify these types of things before I break symmetry and go into posing. It's going to be a lot easier to make these changes now rather than wait till later and have to do them twice, or possibly even more than that for some of these very repetitive structures here. So I've done a great deal of stuff with live booleans in the past, and we can do some more stuff here with trying to figure out how we want to do that and how I want all this to interact and kind of make sense for this character. So again, the whole purpose here working today is to do cleanup. And that's kind of just a general way of saying, you know, we started with the pants, and we definitely cleaned those up a lot, simplified the geometry, fixed some of our mistakes. We did some general cleanup to the face, which in terms of today was, you know, trying to bring out the appeal of the character a little bit more. And now we're trying to make sense of this stuff a little bit more in reality, I think, and try to get rid of some more placeholdery objects. So where do we want to start? Do we want to start with some rope and doing some live Boolean stuff? Do I want to do some texture to this rope? I think even just doing some general noise to those pieces could be helpful. I actually have a rope brush that I could replace a lot of these pieces with, and I definitely don't think that that's a bad idea. A lot of these are, like I said, placeholders. I think it would be interesting to work with some of those. I haven't used the brush in a little bit, so let's try it out. So these are just essentially spheres that I warped and deformed to look like they're parts of this belt loop, but we could do a lot better job, I think. So let's do that. Let's do a better job. Let's first try dropping down our subdivs. Huh. Alright, let's do, keep it at 2. And mirror and weld, just so we know that that's completely mirrored there. Hello, Saluna. Welcome to the stream as we play some ZBrush. What's going on? So let's try some thick rope here. And what I'm going to do is when I draw this stroke out, I'm going to hold the Shift key. And that's going to create a perfect loop around that geometry. So in this case, it actually was a pretty good placeholder for us, as I'm able to very simply put this on over top. And we can see what that's going to look like. And I think I want to make these maybe a little bit thicker. Let's try a draw size of 15. And you can see here up at the top where it connects, it's stretching quite a bit. I'm not exactly sure why that is the case, but really it's not a huge issue, simply because if you look here, we actually have quite a few polygroups. So let's try and get those. Do a split hidden and grab this. So again, not a huge issue that that's stretching, simply because I can kind of hide that in the geometry. We can scale this in, and I want to hide these just so I can see a little bit better, and I can perform a little bit of a rotation. Let that do a quick save. So a little bit of a rotation there to hide that. Can move these a little bit closer together. And just like that, we have some nice rope in place. And even coming through here, you know, just very quickly doing a little bit more of a rotation. It's very simple to add some asymmetry here, just with masking and moving some stuff around a little bit. You can start to see how quickly we can kind of get this in here. And of course that's only one, right? But I think we rotated that maybe just a little bit too well. I think we rotated it like exactly 1 notch. Let's do like half a one maybe a little bit more. Try to make that look a little bit more organic. Cool. And that's just with a dynamic smooth dynamic subdiv on. So I think adding like 1 subdiv to that would get us up to where we want to be. And just a little bit of tweaking here, and we can make this, I think, play pretty nicely with what we got going on. And just some simple asymmetry around this, I think, can make a big difference. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, just enough that it doesn't look so mechanical to catch your eye. And like I said, we can do some live Boolean stuff to create some subtractions in the armor for the rope to slit through, and a lot of stuff like that. And now that I have this piece, you know, I could continue to go around and make more rope, or I could just duplicate that that specific loop there and duplicate that and place that around the rope here. How come you sometimes stream on Twitch and sometimes on YouTube? I was surprised when I saw you live on YouTube, but not on Twitch. So I used to use this the past few streams. I was using Restream.io. Restream.io is a service that lets you stream to multiple channels at once, and it works really well, surprisingly. But during the last stream, I was experiencing quite a bit of lag. So YouTube and Twitch, those are two of the two places that I stream. So because of that lag, I just turned off Restream for the day and decided to just stream to YouTube yesterday and today to just see if maybe that was the cause. I was actually experiencing some problems still after doing that, so I'm really not sure where the issue lies in that. I made some other changes to my stream settings, if you're familiar with like your CBR, so just the number of bits that you're uploading per minute. I don't know what the or I guess it's per second KBS. So just kind of playing with some downscaling in terms of resolution and some other stuff just to find out where the problem lies. But even today, after all those tweaks that I made, I was still getting some lag. So really, it's some trial and error to figure out what's going on there, as I don't know quite yet. But hopefully we figure it out soon, because I would like to use Restream.io. It's an awesome service. I'm a big fan, and it works exceptionally well. In the past, I haven't had too many issues with it, but like I said, maybe that's what is causing the lag that I've been experiencing. So I'm gonna try doing the same thing. Try to wrap around these pieces here for our rope geometry. I'm gonna start real small just so I can hopefully get a better selection here. It looks like it's not wanting to do a nice edge loop for me, which is very sad. I don't know why it's doing that. It can be a little finicky. We can try to manually make it do what I want just by clicking and dragging your curve off the edge, then holding shift. It really doesn't want to play nice though, so maybe just manually adding that in there is going to be the solution this time. That's not actually a bad curve. I might be able to rotate that enough and tweak it enough to where it's working. So that might be, maybe we'll take that. That looks actually pretty good. So let's tweak that a little bit and try to get that into position. Actually, even just keeping on my my symmetry might have been the issue there. Really, it's kind of hard to say. Let's try to split that up. I clicked something there. I don't know what I did. I did not split it though. That time I did. So we got two pieces, one on each side, so these are symmetrical. But that's okay. Again, we can add that asymmetry in there. Tweak it out. Let me hide some stuff, just to make it a little bit easier to work with and see. Whoops. And we'll hide these panels as well. There we go. And we'll hide the arms because those will most likely get in the way. All right, cool. So with the belly, that is not kind of covering the entire way, but I will be adding some thickness to this, and that's like even here. It's not completely getting in there. So let's do an auto groups, just so I can select these and make these single poly groups. That'll be fine. It'll never be seen. It's also important. Similarly with this one over here, the bottom portion of this will never be seen, and we'll be able to bring this edge in similarly to that, but with the entirety of this whole thing. We could do that now, but I don't think it's worth doing until we're really ready. So just like a scale in, we'll pretty much do that for the whole edge. We'll wait a little bit though. And just a control click drag, duplicate. And what I'm actually gonna do, just so that these are facing the same way, I'm gonna do a delete hidden, and if we can make it work, if ZBrush will play nicely, we can make sure that these are going the same way. And then, you know, play with going back to adding that asymmetry back in there. Just something simple. So having those all face the same way. And then I could even, you know, flip these on the other side and maybe have them all face the same way, cascading across everything. So just a little bit of tweaking here, so we don't have the exact same geometry. I did a little bit of a rotate in the middle. Probably best to do it the other way. Make sure that that is completely covered there. When I go to 3D print this, a thing that's going to become, if you're not super familiar with 3D printing, a thing that becomes very apparent very fast is gaps, and thinking about how you're going to work with them. So I think OBS is back on. For some reason we clicked out there, but essentially what I was showing you was a drafting back, simplification of that idea, to draft your detail back to kind of get rid of those gaps and make it a little bit more solid. So that's the basic premise. Let's do a speed test. Let's see what our internet's doing, because I have a feeling my internet's great and something else is going on. I can check my up speed. My upload speed might be a little screwed up, a little wonky. OBS totally just kicked us out there for a second. So upload speed is awesome. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Let me see something. Let's see if we can just change our settings while we're streaming, which it looks like we can. So yeah, that's I have no idea what the problem is. I should be able to do absolutely anything with that. So that's unfortunate. I'll have to play around, keep playing with it, figure out why OBS is being so sassy. Hudboy says he's got to go. Thanks for the noise and entertainment while I worked. Yeah, man, absolutely. Thanks for joining for this entirety of the stream, which is a rare blessing for us. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day, man, or night, wherever you are. So let's keep playing with our ropes, and once I finish kind of doing all of these, I'm gonna have to jet out of here because I got somewhere else I gotta be. So we can delete that piece now and play with our rope a little bit more. Play with your rope. And just try to wrap this around a little bit better. Our draw size for the other one I had at 15, a little important to keep in mind. If I can get that. Now for some reason, that's quite a bit thinner than the other two, even though my draw size is 15. And I don't have dynamic on, so I'm not quite sure why that's being done. Let's try a little bit higher. We can just kind of eyeball it instead and get it closer. So I don't have perspective turned on, so I can kind of look at these a little bit better. I'm pretty sure I was using 15 for my draw size, so I'm not quite sure what the discrepancy there was. I can also scale this up if need be. See some more gaps in there that we'll have to take care of. Still a little bit smaller though. Let's redraw it and see if we can figure out what's going on. Yeah, still looks like the draw size is being weird. I think it's just going to be quicker for us to take this geometry, duplicate it, and reposition it for us into these locations. If you want to get the asymmetry that you would acquire from repeating this process multiple times, that's fine. But for this, I definitely don't think that that is necessary. I can add enough rotation and tweaking to these pieces manually to get the same result. And we can toggle some stuff on and off here to see how that would work. All right. And man, those dogs are going crazy, as always. And move this up. Create some rotation, or actually, let's rotate along this middle axis. Try to rotate that piece a little bit better. There we go. And line that up. Hide some junk. And do that a couple more times, and we will be all set to go here. There's a lot more to do, but like I said, it's every little step kind of, as you guys have seen, joined me this week, as we've kind of been working on this character all week long. All this stuff really adds up. All right. And again, these gaps are probably going to be something that I fix later. I typically, wouldn't worry about something like that until I got to the 3D printing stage. But I would also, I would still have to keep that in mind as I'm working. It's not something that you just completely neglect. I think that would be pretty stupid to do that. So still keep it in mind, but at the same time, it's not my largest concern at the moment. And we can just delete that geometry because we don't need it anymore. It served as a nice placeholder for us. And honestly, for the simplistic style of maybe what we're going for, we could have just used that. But I think this adds a little bit more character and a little bit more interesting texture here by using this specific, rope-like brush material. I'm going to merge all these down so I have them all in one subtool. And like I said, I can just subdivide these once and they'll be at the resolution that I am happy with for, well actually I would probably subdivide twice, add a little bit of noise to them, maybe dynamesh them so that I can, get a little bit better use of my topology, because if we look here, transparency is not going to work. If we look here, the way that this is working right now is here, actually I should be able to do this. So we have some topology in the center of these objects that simply, you can't see and you never will see them. So they're pretty much just taking up, those objects are twice as large as they would be if I were to dynamesh them and have the same resolution. So we'll be doing that eventually to kind of clean some stuff up and save us some space. It's also important to think about just to kind of optimize everything for your tool here as you're working. But yeah, I think that's kind of a good first step in what we're going to be doing to the rest of this, and kind of playing around with as we replace a lot of these pieces. And again, stuff like this, so it's not just a placeholder and in the way. We want these things to interact with each other and actually make sense from a physical standpoint. We don't just want geometry blending into geometry. We want some actual purpose and reason behind the things that we create. So I think there's some things that we might be able to get away with to kind of represent the idea of like maybe maybe we just leave these pieces the way that they are, just because based on the reference here, if you have some rope and all this stuff is kind of blending together, maybe that makes sense for that purpose. But I think there's some other stuff that we do want it to make a little bit more sense in the context of our armor and our character as a whole. So let me save this and find out what happened here. I lost my location real quick. And I think that'll be a good place to stop for the evening. And I would like to stream some more tomorrow for sure. Keep working on this guy. I think we got a cool roll going on this week. We've streamed each day and been able to make some really good progress. And I've of course done more stuff off of stream to these guys, like you saw the koi fish relief sculpting that I did on the hammer. I thought that was fun. It was a little easier for me to do that off stream so that I could do it a little faster. So we'll do more stuff like that, and I'll show off some more stuff on stream. I try to do a little bit more of the boring stuff off of stream, but in all honesty, a lot of it is boring. A lot of it is repeated kind of detailing and repeated practices again and again. But I think it's interesting to see how our character has developed over these past 3 or 4 days, and we'll continue to do that over the next few more and keep pushing forward on this guy and see how far we can take him. So thanks guys for coming and joining me as we stream and kind of make some progress on this guy, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. So I'll see you for tonight, and hope to see you in the next one again. See ya.